Good afternoon. Welcome to the CPCU Society webinar, Overcoming Imposter Syndrome, presented by Darcy Andrews and Professional Growth and Development Interest Group. My name is Kelly McAnally, and I am the Programming Coordinator for the CPCU Society. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping reminders. All participants are in a listen-only mode. Please use the question and answer box located at the bottom of your screen to ask questions throughout the session. We will do our best to answer as many questions as time allows, and today's session is being recorded, and you will receive your recording link via email within 48 hours. And before we begin, please take a moment to read our antitrust statement. Okay, thank you. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Darcy Andrews. Darcy Andrews is a newly appointed Customer Success Manager with the Washington Survey and Rating Bureau. Before working at WSRB, she was a commercial and agricultural underwriter for Liberty Mutual. In her career, Darcy has worked on the agency side and surplus lines, been a captive underwriter, and has owned her own small business. As a lifetime learner, Darcy has tried on many jobs and volunteer opportunities, experiencing imposter syndrome on a regular basis. Darcy holds multiple designations, including the CPCU. She is currently pursuing her doctorate in organizational leadership, and her focus is on positive leadership and how organizations can create a more inclusive workplace and a sense of belonging. Darcy is a member of the Professional Growth and Development Interest Group and has served on the Oregon Chapter CPCU board since 2019. And with that, let me hand over to Darcy to get started.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thanks for your introduction and welcome. And I'm really glad to be here today. And I appreciate all of you that have come to listen to me talk about this topic. Some of you may know what imposter syndrome is, and some of you may not. You might be here to learn more about it. My hope today is that you have something to take away that helps you recognize it in others, or something to deal with understanding yourself a little better. So just a couple of things. We don't have the ability to interact very well on this platform, but if you have a question or a comment, I love to hear people's thoughts. So please put something in the Q&A. And if we don't get to it right away, then we will answer your questions at the end. There's going to be plenty of time. We'll try to monitor it, but it's not easy for me to see those comments and questions. So Kelly's going to be helping me with that. And then the other thing is that you will get these slides and presentation at the end in a link. And I've included a couple of YouTube links on my slides. We're not going to watch the YouTube videos, obviously, today, but if you have some time and some interest, I'd highly recommend looking them up afterwards, because I think they're really valuable. So first of all, what is imposter syndrome? And here on this slide is the definition according to Psychology Today. And basically, imposter syndrome is that little voice in your head, and it's the one that tells you you're not enough, you're not thin enough, you're not attractive enough, you're not smart enough, you'll never make it. It's anything that holds you back or makes you feel like you're less than the people around you. And imposter syndrome tends to hit high achievers. And you may know people like that. They just can never give up. You know, they're getting more education or more designations, or just striving for the next thing, but they never really feel like they've made it. So who has imposter syndrome? And this link at the bottom is a really fun little video that kind of synthesizes all the material. And it talks about Maya Angelou and Albert Einstein. Both had imposter syndrome. Albert Einstein felt that he was an involuntary swindler, were the words that he used. And researchers believe that up to 70% of people have had feelings like this at some point in their lives. And a Google search of people with imposter syndrome comes up with some really interesting names. Tom Hanks, the actor, is one of them. Saturday Night Live actor Tina Fey is another. Lady Gaga says that she wakes up every morning feeling like that, quote, loser back in high school, and she has to remind herself that she's needs to get up and be who her fans expect her to be. Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg and CEO of Starbucks Howard Schultz, they both said that they expected every day to just be found out and escorted out of their offices for not knowing anything. So I thought that was really fascinating. Is anyone surprised at that list that these high-level people that you think should just feel success and that they made it can actually say, I just don't feel like I'm anybody? So what can cause imposter syndrome? And all of these things: competitive environments, high expectations of your parents, or having to keep up with siblings. Maybe you're just new at your job, and maybe your job's a poor fit for you. I can tell a personal story here, and I just mean this to be like entertaining and relatable, so please don't feel sorry for me. I'm an only child. I don't have any competition in my life. I've got no brothers or sisters that are doing better than I am to keep up with. Made my own rules growing up, no worries, right? Easy street. Except my mom's a teacher, and all of my mom's friends are teachers, and my mom is incredibly afraid of failure and kind of treated me like I was an embarrassment, like a lot of years when I was growing up. And I think it's our job as kids to embarrass our parents. If you have kids and you're on this call, you probably can relate to that. And I think I did a pretty good job at that, but I don't think I did an extraordinary job at it. But my mom also had trouble saying, I'm proud of you. And I don't want to tell you how old I was the first time that she said that to me, because you would know almost how old I am now. And my mom has a lot of really redeeming qualities, but teaching me that I was good enough was not one of them. So I heard a lot during my childhood of, well, that was good. You got a good grade, but what else can you do? What are you going to do next? It was always the next thing. There was never a focus on, great, you completed that. Like I was never allowed to plateau, I guess. And school was also a struggle for me, not because of ability, but because of interest. And I never had to work very hard to get decent grades, good grades, I guess. I always tested well, which was really great, except it didn't really teach me to strive for anything or to feel any form of success from that. So it also wasn't cool to be smart when I was young, and it probably still isn't now. But one of the other mitigating factors of like what caused imposter syndrome for me is that my whole life, and many of you might have heard this, I was told that you can do anything you put your mind to. And that's just not true. And it sets high expectations for you, right? Because sometimes you have a limitation due to your age or your gender or your aptitude. I mean, even at 19 years old, probably I wasn't going to be a rocket scientist ever. Math is something that I've always disliked enough that I struggle with it because I don't want to work through the details of it. I'm more like a, high level thinking and creative type person. So those kinds of things can cause us to suffer imposter syndrome. And it's historically thought to affect women more than men, but disproportionately affects all individuals who feel marginalized. So the fact that some people have just always had to work harder for the same things that come easy for others is where this plays in. And at my prior workplace, I had the great honor of leading sessions for our women empowerment group. And the sessions were called Engaging Men as Allies. And male leaders from around the company would sign up, and we would talk about how men can be better allies for women and people of color and differently abled people on their teams. It was fantastic. I loved my work in that. But I had a lot of opportunity to have conversations with male leaders then, and through interviews and other networking type opportunities too. And when I bring up imposter syndrome to men a lot, I hear, I don't know what that is. But I also hear them say things like, oh, one time I got this job that I didn't even belong in. I didn't have the skills, and I don't know why. Somebody took a chance on me and I got to have it. So I think that happens possibly more often for men than women and minorities. And I think that's part of why we suffer from imposter syndrome. There's a discrepancy between how men apply for jobs and how women apply for jobs. Men apply if they meet some of the boxes, right, on the requirements on an interview. And women just, they want to check all the boxes before they apply. So there's definitely a difference in how we think about that. There's a February 11th, 2021 article, Harvard Business Review, called Stop Telling Women That They Have Imposter Syndrome. And it discusses how making opportunities and making our workplace inclusive is critical to our business. And I'll quote this to you. I have to read this. The impact of systemic racism, classism, xenophobia, and other biases were categorically absent when the concept of imposter syndrome was developed. And it goes on to say that imposter syndrome blames the individual that has it. But now we need to account for the foundational historical and cultural contexts. And I believe that's true, and that imposter syndrome focuses on the person instead of also fixing the places that we work. And I think we need both. I think it's really important to look at both, because wherever you stand on race and gender issues, one thing is clear. We need to not only accept ourselves for who we are, but we need to fix our expectations of others. I will say that my perfectionism gets the best of me constantly. And I also find some sense of relief in knowing, if you look at these graphs on the right, this crisis of confidence, and the students at University of Michigan who think that other people are smarter than them. So these graphs are powerful because they show you, it's not just me, it's not just you, it's a lot of people feel the same way. Astronomy graduate students, like, I would think they would be infinitely smarter than I am, and yet they also feel this way. So this is why we're talking about this subject, because it helps us, and I'm saying us as in me, and it also helps us to help others when we recognize it in them. So feelings of fraud are extremely common. And here are some things that go on inside people's heads when they are experiencing imposter syndrome. And I experienced at least a couple of these when I was putting together this presentation. Maybe this isn't you, maybe this is, your friend or your neighbor. Maybe you're intimately familiar with this like I am. But these voices in your head that say these things, you wouldn't tolerate a friend that said those things to you. That's the number one thing. Maybe these are just some seeds of doubt that somebody else has planted in you. But knowing that this isn't just you, that this is other people as well, hopefully is helpful. So I like these profiles, the imposter syndrome. What's your type? And I wonder if anybody can recognize themselves in here. And then I wonder also, is there anybody else on this call besides me that feels like time is moving a lot faster? And even with the pandemic, even with being stuck inside and on our computers all the time and these Zoom calls, there's just so much more to do every day. And that feeling of not being able to keep up, that plays into this imposter syndrome too, because the superwoman, I should be able to do this all. I should know this. I should be able to do this perfectly by now. Well, nobody else can do this as well as I can, so I'm just going to have to take care of it myself. So how imposter syndrome manifests. And I want you to think for a minute about each one of these statements on this slide. And if you've ever felt this way or thought one of these thoughts? And how does this impact your work? And how do you think this impacts the work of others around you? There's a lot of research out there that the most diverse organizations are the most profitable and successful. Diversity is not just skin color or gender, it's also diversity of thought. And it's a willingness to speak up when things look wrong or look off track. And instead of being part of the groupthink, right? So when you or others feel like you can't speak up and you can't offer your ideas and you can't offer your opinions, it's a detriment to your organization. It's a detriment to yourself, and it's even a detriment to our society as a whole. Each one of us has a gift. We have something special or unique about us. We have something to offer this world. And if you don't offer your ideas, if you don't share your opinion, if you don't write that song or play that guitar or dance that dance, we may never know what your gift is. And the world is a little bit less rich as a result. You know, I go back to the people on the first few slides that suffer from imposter syndrome. Like, imagine this world without Maya Angelou and Albert Einstein and Tom Hanks and Lady Gaga and all the talent that they've brought forward. And you may not know it, but you may have something just really amazing hiding inside you too. Or maybe you have that and you're just afraid to voice it. So the other thing on this is that I've been studying in my research about what makes organizations toxic. And I've been reading a lot of articles about why narcissists get promoted to leadership positions. And it's because, personally, I feel it's because that he who is the most confident, they win. Narcissists are charming, they're charismatic, and they're very confident about what they think. And 70% of the rest of us are just sitting around going, well, I don't know, that doesn't sound right, or that doesn't feel right, but I am sure that guy knows, because he seems to, or that woman knows, because they seem to really be confident in what they're saying. So, and they've probably done the research, so I should just sit here and say nothing. So we all need to speak up. We all have something to offer. So humans have basic needs to feel a sense of belonging and respect. And Maslow was an American psychologist, and he's famous for an article that he published in 1943, and it's called A Theory of Human Motivation. And Maslow believed that humans were acutely aware of their motivations and were engaged in the pursuit of self-acceptance and understanding. So once our basic needs of food and shelter and security, the bottom two tiers here on the pyramid, are met, then we start looking for things like love and belonging, and then a sense of respect, and that people value us. We all want to have value in our organizations. How does it impact you when you don't feel included? Like, let's say you just joined a new team, and on your team, there's like 2 people that you're pretty sure you're not even going to get along with. And you're not even sure that you're a really good fit for this team or this job. But you still want to feel included. You still want to feel like you have a shot. You want to feel like people value your work. And psychologist Adam Grant talks about the NASA scientists that are up on the space station, and building this sense of like trust and safety, even when they don't like each other. That would be a pretty extreme environment to be stuck with somebody in if you didn't at least get along with them. So how does this impact the workplace? And like I talked about before, if you're sitting in a meeting and something doesn't make sense, or you don't agree with it, how often do you think you're the only one in the room that feels that way? And it's important also to our health and our well-being to feel like we belong and to feel competent and to feel included. Has anybody here ever felt sick on a Sunday night because they're dreading the workplace in the morning? They don't want to go. And what was it that was driving that for you? What made you not want to go to work? Was it that you didn't feel adequate for some reason? Either you didn't feel like you could get all your work done, or you didn't feel like you were good at your work. Maybe you felt, like you just couldn't go deal with those work people again because you just didn't feel like you belonged. So those are some ways in which it impacts it. And people obviously perform better when they feel competent and included and engaged, and feeling like you know what you're doing at your job is important, but also having relationships with the people at work where you feel like they respect you and you're valued, even if you don't necessarily get along. And having this sense of belonging and competency at work is important, because when organizations go through change, then you're just dealing with that change. You're not dealing with all of the stress and anxiety inside of you. And look at the cost of stress in the workplace. And granted, imposter syndrome is not responsible for all of that, but there's a $300 billion annual cost to U.S. employers, and 120,000 people die a year just because of work-related stress. And that cost is just too high. So how can we help others feel like they're valued and belong? And I go back to the story of the elephant and the giraffe when I think about a sense of belonging. And the diversity and inclusion uses this analogy a lot. So diversity is inviting the giraffe to the elephant house, and inclusion is making the giraffe feel welcome in the elephant house. But equity is giving the giraffe a higher roof to accommodate his height and providing food for him that is appropriate for a giraffe. And so not only like inviting people to be part of your space, but also making them feel welcome, and then doing what it takes to have some equity so that they not only feel like they're welcome there, but that they're actually included. And so then these things also, creating a culture where people feel welcome to be there and they feel like they can bring their full self is really important. And whether you are officially a leader in your title or you are an individual contributor in your title, you can be a leader. Anybody can be a leader just through their actions and behaviors and how they treat others. And honesty, treating others with honesty and integrity is important. Being civil to others, even when you don't necessarily getting along with them. Agree to disagree is a really important key in our business dealings. Being fair if you're a leader and you have to make decisions that impact the people under you, showing fairness in your decisions and giving everybody a chance, like looking at them for who they are and the value they bring to the table, instead of having these high expectations of who you want somebody to be. And kindness, it doesn't cost anything to be kind, and it can mean the whole world for somebody. Humility, I think it's really important that all of us show humility in our thoughts and opinions and are willing to listen to other people and maybe see their perspective. Maybe it's different from us. So also it's really important for people to be recognized. There's an author that wrote the 5 love languages, if you're familiar with that. And he's written a couple of books. One is the 5 languages of love in the workplace, and the other is the vibrant workplace. And he talks a lot about the different styles of recognition that people like. Sometimes people want to be recognized in front of others. Sometimes they want to have a tangible reward, and it's different for different people. So knowing how people want to be recognized is important, not just recognizing them. Giving people an idea to speak up with their ideas and talk about issues safely is really important. And recognition for women seems to be more important by men by a small margin, but it's still there. So another thing is that the sense of failure that people have, creating an environment where it's okay to fail. You failed, you made a mistake. This is what we learned from it. It's great that we learned that. There are actually cultures out there, and some of you may work in them, where people are rewarded for failure. And they're rewarded for pulling the plug early on projects when they can tell they're not going to work out, instead of dealing with a sunk cost of a project and everybody committing to something that's not working out. The employees and the managers have the ability to say, this isn't going to work. It's too bad we spent a couple million on this, but we're done. And they're rewarded for that. There's companies that have offered bonuses for those types of initiatives. And so when people fail or they make a mistake, encourage them to learn from it and move on. And that's good in your personal life too, because the difference between somebody that succeeds and somebody that fails is somebody succeeds, gets up one more time than they fall, because everybody falls down. So failure is just a regular part of living. And the employee resource groups, I wanted to touch on that. So we had a lot of employee resource groups at my prior employer, and they were a great way to connect with people and give people a sense of belonging, especially in a larger organization. But I've seen examples of employee resource groups in other companies, and they're not just about race or gender. There was one company that had an employee resource group that was for environmental issues. So I thought that was really a cool idea, because people that care about something can get together and talk about it and feel like they belong to something larger than themselves. And that's overall something that you want in an organization. It makes your organization better. So if you caught my presentation back in May on managing change, you might recognize this slide and this concept, but I wanted to talk about it for just a quick minute. And it's the Pygmalion effect, and it's the impact of believing the best in others. And this helps us help other people, but it also has a positive spiral effect on us as well. And so the Pygmalion effect was in 1968. Some researchers went into a school and they did a bunch of intelligence tests on kids. And they went to the teachers afterwards and they said, these 20% of your students, and they identified which ones they were, they have the top IQs. They're going to do great. They're the smartest kids in your class. And then they went away. And then they came back at the end of the year and they tested the kids again. And the 20% that they had identified at the beginning of the year scored the best. They scored better. And the funny thing is that the criteria for choosing them wasn't that they did the best on the initial test. The kids were chosen at random, but the teachers believed those were their best students. And as a result, they treated them like they were smart and they were different. And this study's been repeated in different environments and different levels of education. And it's powerful in that it tells us that when we believe the best in others and we treat them like we expect them to give their best, then they're going to show up and they're going to give it. And conversely, when someone is told their whole life, you're not going to amount to anything, you're never going to make it, you have no aptitude for this, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy too. So it's really in our best interest to treat people as if we believe the best in them. And the other thing is that the study doesn't work if the teachers know ahead of time that this is what's happening. If the teachers had any inkling that these were not their smartest students, it wouldn't have worked. But it worked because the teachers truly believed it. And so when you truly believe the best in others, and it sounds fluffy, I guess, or maybe hard to do, but it's really not, because when you start looking at everybody like they have a value and they have a gift and they have something special about them, it really does change how you think about them. So combating your own imposter syndrome, or maybe your friends, you're really responsible for promoting your own sense of competency and belonging in a lot of ways, but you also can help others and help yourself at the same time. And awareness is really key if you feel like you have this. And letting go of perfectionism, that's huge. That's something that I suffer with. Facing your fears is really big. I am constantly challenging myself to do something new and try something new. And I'm in a constant state of imposter syndrome as a result. I've recently made a job change. I moved jobs at the end of June, and it's given me an opportunity to face my fears again of not knowing anything, not knowing who to go to, not knowing the answers, not feeling confident to be able to call customers. But it's helping me to grow too. If you've ever heard the saying, if you're comfortable, you're not growing. And I'm also in school, which has been quite a journey, getting my doctorate. I was a C- student in undergrad and never expected to be going to school at this level. When I started my master's program about 5 years ago, I had all those feelings that we've already identified, where I'm like, they're going to find me out. I'm going to take one class and I'm going to fail at it because I haven't written a paper since I was 20 years old and I was terrible at it then. So I'm probably going to get thrown out of this program, and that's fine. At least I tried it. And that hasn't happened yet. And so sometimes I tell myself, well, the university just wants my money. That's why I'm here. But that's not true. The truth is I'm working really hard, and I'm trying really hard to learn everything that I can. And I'm embracing all my opportunities. And when I get to a class or an assignment that I think, I can't do this. I'm in one right now where I understand the material, but it's so detail oriented, and that's just not me. And I'm struggling with it. And I had a class with a professor that I had a really hard time with, only one out of everything I've done so far. So my odds are good, but I pushed through that. And facing your fears and getting to the other side of that and feeling that accomplishment, it's a really amazing feeling. And it really helps combat some of these problems, because you feel like you leveled up. It's like beating the bad boss in a video game. And I just feel like it's really important to have those moments where you just push through. Don't give up. Write down your accomplishments and successes. I think that that's really important, and because I've done that before on a review that I had at my prior employer, where I'm like, I haven't done anything this year. But then I started writing them down, and I had to start writing them down as I went along so I could remember them. And I realized how much I'd actually done. I also surround myself with a lot of positive thoughts and positive thinkers. And I put the link on here. There's a motivational speaker named T. Harv Eker, and he's a pretty tough guy, but he teaches a class on your ego. And your ego, if you've studied anything about that, it's based in the animal part of your brain that protects you from danger. But it protects us from ourselves sometimes, and it keeps us fearful. And he teaches this course, Don't Believe a Thought You Think, and talks about, not listening to your brain when you're having those fear moments, because you won't accomplish anything if you listen to them. Just do the hard things. That's my greatest advice. And challenge your own thinking when you're feeling negative. Face yourself. Why am I thinking this? Why am I feeling this? What's causing this in me? And try to get to the root of that, and see if you can solve the root of that problem. And learn lessons from your failures, as we talked about before, because you're going to have them, because everybody does. So negative self-talk is a really bad habit. And I think most of us do that. It heavily influences our stress and anxiety levels, which we already discussed is really a problem. So recognizing when someone is engaging in that, or when you're engaging in it, is important. I am so lucky because I have people in my life that hear me do that, and they say, hey, Darcy, stop that. Don't talk that way. And it reminds me, at least for a minute, to be nicer to myself. And being kind to yourself, that means really talking to yourself the way that you would want somebody else to talk to you. It's really important. And you can practice this, and you can get better at it. And there's a lot of resources on YouTube, for example, with subliminal messages to reprogram your brain. I use all of that. I've had to get myself out of, the upbringing that I had. If you've ever heard that saying, everything you want is on the other side of fear, that's true. And that's usually where your gift is lying, is somewhere in what you're afraid of doing. So by facing our fear of rejection or failure, we can accomplish things that we've only ever dreamed of, and maybe something you didn't even know you could do. I don't know if anybody on this call has heard of a Dutch motivational speaker named Wim Hof, and he's also an extreme athlete. They call him the Iceman. He teaches this breathing technique that he learned, and he like swims under the ice farther than anybody should have been able to. He does some really amazing things. I don't want to do what he does, but I admire him, and he inspires me. And I hope that by using some ideas of what we've talked about today, that you can find something that also makes you feel courageous when you're not feeling that way. Another way that I look for inspiration is in other people's stories on LinkedIn or in the news of things people accomplish. And I have a playlist I like to listen to when I'm lacking in motivation or I feel like I'm lacking in some way. And one of the songs I particularly like is by a group called Eastern Odyssey, and the song is called Critical Mass. It's this strange little group with a strange little song, and you know how they're talking in the background. The lyrics are what make this song special for me. And they say, when you grow up, you get told the world is the way that it is. And your life is just to live your life inside that world. Try not to bash into the walls too much. But that's a very limited life. Life can be broader once you discover one simple fact, and that's that everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And so truly, if you start considering that although people may think differently than you, they may have different skills than you, but they aren't intrinsically less than you or better than you, it really offers a profoundly new way of thinking about the people and the world around you. And, we're talking about imposter syndrome here, and it just seems like some little voice in your head that should be easy to get over. But really, this voice in your head that holds people back, it's a relationship killer. It's a job killer, it's a career killer, and sometimes it literally kills people because they just feel like they're not good enough. So it's really important, and it's important that we face our own fears and that we deal with that so that we can have healthy relationships and a great career and continue to be a going concern, right? And that we help others that way too. And that's back to where I said about the kindness and treating people as if they're of value is really important for building that in our workplace and amongst ourselves. So I'm at the end of what I wanted to talk about. I hope that you guys got something out of it, some little takeaway. I'd love to hear if anybody has something that they related to or have any questions. Let me see if I can pull up the question and answers here.
Hi there, Darcy. Yeah, so it seems like a lot of people were writing in with comments, just saying that, yes, they have felt this way, but at least they're in good company. Someone said, not a question, but there's breathing or daily meditation that are both awesome tools for help, motivation, confidence, and dealing with anxiety, which I know is very helpful for me as well. Let's see. There are some other people writing in.
I see like 4 comments right now. So I see one from Catherine, and thank you for that question. So to what degree do you feel that camaraderie has potential to offset imposter syndrome? I hope it's okay I said your name, by the way. I'm not sure if the other participants can see that. It seems there might be a tipping point where one feels they are sharing ideas with friends versus putting their thoughts up for judgment by the group. So that comes back to building that inclusive environment, right, where people feel safe. And having an environment amongst your friends or your workplace and being that person yourself, I think is huge. I think that we look, in my research in positive leadership, we look a lot at what we call the positive spiral. So when you start doing something, it generates others. When you start doing something positive, it certainly works in reverse in the negative. When you start doing something positive, it generates this positive feeling amongst others, and they start doing positive things, and it just keeps going, right? And that's what we want to generate, because there's a study that says that having one negative or toxic person on your team can reduce your work production by 40%. So imagine now if you've got a couple of those negative people, what's happening in your workplace or your volunteer group. And so not being that negative person is super important, and being a person people can trust is super important. But then also surrounding yourselves with those people and making sure that you're, maybe you have to tolerate somebody like that in your life, but you identify them and you don't share with them, because it keeps you in this constant negative situation if you're sharing information and being judged. And I've been that person on a team before where I'm afraid to speak up and I don't think I have any value, and I've been shot down or I've been called stupid. You guys on this call are all CPCUs. I literally have my CPCU because I had a boss that told me once, it was before I ever took a single insurance class. I went and I said, hey, I really want to get a designation. I think it will make me a little smarter and help me react, help me handle calls better of our customers. And he said, we're not going to pay for that class because you're not smart enough to take it. And I've never forgotten that. But in that case, I recognized that. And instead of letting it get to me, I was like, oh, I'm going to show you. And so that helped. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's how I feel, is that being that person and then surrounding myself with that person is really important. And then somebody remarked that the Wim Hof breathing and daily meditation are both awesome tools for health, motivation, confidence, and dealing with anxiety. I agree with that. And I've recently been looking into like wearable technology. There's these little buzzers you can get, and you can stick them in your pockets or wristbands, or and they kind of like refocus you when you're feeling stress or overwhelm or anxiety. They're supposed to help with anger too. Fortunately, I don't deal with that a lot. A couple people liked Wim Hof. Someone also mentioned they could relate to it and they have to encourage themselves daily. Okay, so I realized it was about 2007 where I woke up one morning and literally went, my life is going to be on a really bad trajectory if I don't clean up my thinking. I have to start thinking differently. I have to change who I talk to. I have to change how I talk. And I still struggle. I've been at this for a while, you guys, and I have surrounded my brain with all these positive thoughts and ideas, and I'm studying it. Like, I am having to get my doctorate in positive leadership just so I can learn something about how to stay positive and motivate others to do the same. And I still struggle daily. I had computer problems earlier when I was trying to get logged in with this, and I just was walking around my house like ranting about it. So I'm my own worst enemy sometimes, and I need this stuff more than anybody is why I'm studying it. And so somebody did ask where I'm getting my doctorate from and what it's on. My doctoral program is organizational leadership with a focus on positive leadership. And so there's a movement called positive psychology. It's fairly young, but psychology looks at what's sick with people and what's wrong with people. And positive psychology looks at what your strengths are and how to bring those out in others. And so ideally in a workplace, instead of just sending off to people to do their tasks on like random things that the workplace has decided is important, they would say, Kelly is really good at making presentations and being out in front of people. So we're going to have her always be the face of our organization. And then we're also going to give her some tasks where maybe she can help others, learn and train to be the same. And Jack over here, he's really loves the written word. He likes writing letters. So we're going to put him in charge of written communication in our company. And that's in a small company. In a larger company, when you have teams, you know, underwriting, I came from underwriting teams. So there were people that were really good at specific risks. And in my perfect world, if I was running an organization, I would say this underwriter that specializes, that just really understands trucking. We all work on it a little bit, but when we get something complicated, we're going to give it to Jack. Jack's going to do it, you know, and Michelle is going to handle nonprofits for the most part because she's really good at it, and separating people out. So, my university is Abilene Christian University, and they have an amazing online program. I got my master's degree program through them. It was in organizational development. And I have a whole story I could tell you about a class that I took. I was mad about because I was scared and I didn't want to do it and I didn't think I'd ever use it. And it's the basis of why I'm here today in front of you. So facing your fears is important. But I got done with my master's and decided I wasn't done. I still had things to learn and do, and I do. So I hope that was a really long answer. I'm really sorry about that. And so somebody asked a really good question. How do you attend a meeting where you were the lead presenter and have the confidence and not feel like an imposter due to the attitude of the attendees that they may not expect or appreciate your contribution? Well, first of all, this platform is really nice for that because I can't really see what you guys are thinking, and nobody can throw tomatoes at me, which is awesome. I do have imposter syndrome. This, for some reason, was a much harder presentation to put together and talk about because, ironically, what was going through my head is who is going to care about this? Who's going to show up? You know, who? And yet I know it helps people because I know that there's people out there like me and like you. And that's why this last slide here of the 25th Annual Imposter Syndrome Convention is my favorite one because it's so funny and yet it's so true. Everyone here totally belongs except me. Everyone here knows what's going on except me. I'm the only one that feels that way. And that is absolutely not true. It's 70% of people. If Lady Gaga can feel like she still might be the loser in high school, you know, and Tom Hanks is afraid that people are going to find out he's not a good actor. Like, what does that say for you and me on this call? And how we feel about ourselves? It means that this is normal, and just really back to when you see other people doing this, when you have friends that are really agonizing, it's really tempting to just tell them you're going to be fine and kind of brush them off, but really try to help them to deal with it and find out what's your thinking. What are you afraid of? Couple nice comments. Somebody else that's working on their doctorate. Thank you so much for your feedback on that. I felt like an imposter all the way, and this is really great. Really appreciate the positive comments and everybody. So I had to face my fears to be on this call today because I love this. Like, I want to get this information out here and I want to share it. But so with recordings and stuff, things live on the internet for the rest of our lives, right? So this will, it's hard not to feel those feelings. So. That's the bottom of the questions that I have, unless anybody has anything extra. What I could give you today is 10 minutes of your day back, and I just want to share my information. I do. So speaking of that imposter syndrome thing, I have this weird thing with my computer, and that's why I'm in the dark. I have so many lights here, and my computer keeps readjusting and making things really dark. So my LinkedIn profile is on this final slide, and if you want to continue this conversation, if you want to share your stories, I love hearing how this relates to people. And in my perfect world, I would have done this in like a group setting where we could talk and I could hear your stories and I could share more of mine. And I think that's how we connect and build these networks and communities of people that are positive and think the same. So that's all I have. Really, really, once again, appreciate everybody and thanks for being here today.
All right. Well, thank you, Darcy. On behalf of the CPCU Society, thank you so much for joining us today and for this wonderful and very relatable presentation. I feel like everyone here really just can relate and connect to this content. So thank you so much for taking the time and facing your fears to be here. And thank you to the Professional Growth and Development Interest Group for organizing this webinar as well. And to our listeners, thank you again for joining us. And please remember to complete the short survey at the end of this webinar, and a reminder that you'll be receiving your recording within 48 hours. So that's all for us today. Thank you all so much for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.